have with AI, both in terms of pedagogy consideration, but also the content as well. So that's one of the comments. And then there's a question, particularly for David, from Professor Judy Robson, about how does multimodal affect recognition intersects with the EU AI Act, which prohibits inferring emotions in workplace or educational institutions. David, do you want to address that question? So how does multimodal affect recognition intersect with the EU AI Act, which prohibits inferring emotion in work and education places?
Judy, could you come online? Because I think it's a really interesting point. It'd be great if I could just have a chat.
Yeah,
brilliant. So I'm trying to find where you are in the. Still can't find you. So interestingly, the projects that. So I'm reading the next comment. The projects that we were developed in terms of multimodal effect recognition to understand students' emotional states were really for students with the greatest learning need, those with profound and multiple learning disabilities, and nonverbal students with autism. Both of those projects in 2016 and 2019 were funded by the European Union. Interestingly,
before the AI Act came into force, though.
So Judy, that came into force in 24, 25.
Yes.
So we're looking at that now. There is no specific legislation at the moment which prohibits using AI to support students with intellectual disability or autism in the UK at the moment. But it's really interesting. I find that, we were trying to develop systems to support the communication and understanding of students' learning needs who are perhaps nonverbal and with the greatest educational needs, funded by the EU. But the EU Act now says you can't use multimodal effect recognition in the workplace or in schools. So that is new to what we're doing as well. So we've always worked within special educational schools and with people working in special education at Nottingham Trent and a variety of European countries to always, first of all, understand the learning needs of those students perhaps who are in the greatest challenge or nonverbal, and to put them at the centre of any decision-making process with what you do with the data or the analytics or the insights produced by the algorithms. But so we've always come at it with that point from that stance, working with students in co-design and teachers in special education needs and disabilities. But the Act seems to prohibit, especially in the EU, the use of that kind of technology within classroom settings. So we've always done it in research, but we've done testing, obviously with ethical approval in schools, but we've never actually deployed in schools. So after saying that, Judy, what is your reflection or what is your stance?
So we've been doing quite a lot of work on children's rights and how that's affected by AI. And I think in this case, I can see in a research context how with small numbers of learners, you're able to ensure that the use could be in the best interests of the child. But I think in the general case, there could be a real conflict between the best interests of the child and their right to education. Bearing in mind that another child right is about the right to a full education, to full potential if you're disabled as well. So I think there's a lot at play here, but I'm not convinced that multimodal affect recognition is always in the best interests of a learner, and it could undermine other rights. And I think for me, there's something unfortunate about the undermining of agency and the lack of human touch there. I suspect it's a very personal feeling.
No, it's really interesting, Judy, because what we've always said is whatever kind of intervention we develop is to support teachers. So when we've worked with people in special educational needs and disabilities in Nottinghamshire, they were saying we have some very experienced teachers working in the classroom, but we have some very non-experienced teachers work in the classroom. And so what we were trying to do was develop systems which might support the judgment of some of the less experienced teachers, but not to override any teacher's decision-making process.
Yes, and I suppose also to remember that what might be supportive for the teacher might not be in the best interests of the child in every case. So it's recognising that as well. It's a very difficult area.
And it's interesting, and especially, the two projects, very big projects. One was a very big Horizon 2020 project, which was about multimodal interaction, including human robotic interaction, and on a different range of interactive technologies to support students with profound and multiple learning disabilities and those with autism. And a later one looking at emotional dysregulation in students with autism. So if we use multimodal effect recognition, the inferences are looking at why some students with autism experience inverted commas meltdown events. That's even the words that are used by National Autistic Society, to understand the triggers for that particular student to emotional dysregulation event, so you can build up a pattern from the data insights about what triggers the particular students to be used by them or their students or their parents or caregivers. Again, that was funded by the EU. And so we always have a very interdisciplinary team, people working in SEND as well. But they were interestingly both funded by the EU, both reside in research at the moment, and both informed by a range of people, not just in computer science. I never would work just with computer scientists and something as sensitive to this, but it's about that design team who are very interdisciplinary, and also we work with privacy preserving approaches and trying to, if we train our algorithms, I only train with ethical approval on data gathered with and for people with SEND and autism. But you're right, it's becoming, in terms of legislation, increasingly, especially with the Act, increasingly legislative, and rightly so. But then again, you might think, well, there's our position is a range of students who are sometimes nonverbal, or their individual expressions aren't understood by a range of sometimes inexperienced teachers.
Thank you.
But I'd like to talk to you more about it. Yeah.
Thank you both. And I think some of the issues raised there are not just specifically applicable to the context that, David, you are referring to, but also I think in general, that tension between learners' rights and learners and teachers' agency, plus how the technologies impact on our decision making, impact on our pedagogical practices as well. So I want to return back to the questions raised by Dr. Trang and Dr. Hien in terms of, at this stage where, AI and AI in education is happening just so fast, there's just so much going on. Drawing on your experience, Dr. Sidabasi, how do we go about working with teachers on kind of developing, using AI, developing teachers' knowledge and competencies that's focused on, the ethics and the responsible use and some of the issues that Judy and David just talked about in terms of understanding the impact on learners as well?
Yeah, I think good questions there. And I wanted to just say a couple things about, I think first of all, the pace of progress in AI domain and field is just, I think, creating extra pressure in terms of policy and regulations catching up with it. because the more, that every day something is advancing, and that is making it hard in terms of understanding what are the issues and understanding how we can regulate or provide policies. And we've seen that in our project with, for example, we recruited these teachers from different local authorities in Scotland, and some come from a local authority where at the local authority level, the use of AI for teachers or learners are prohibited at the moment, just because they don't know how to look at that, kind of in a safe way, which is for the right reasons. And that question came up in our first meeting with the teachers saying, what are we going to do? Well, in some ways, they are working for us for a kind of looking at into the future when there is a policy in place, when there is some kind of acceptable use to AI for teaching and learning, then there are resources available for teachers and, learners. That's kind of our point of view. And two, I think questions from Trang about how to do this in school settings. And I think this also links to what David said earlier about teachers. I think what I find from our research and also from my own current research with understanding teachers' digital competencies and done some recent interviews with teachers, is just biggest factor in, I think, teacher professional learning is the time that's available to them, and that is especially in terms of developing that face-to-face. This is from another project that we have. It's a data education and schools project funded through Scottish Government, and we've been doing some professional learning for teachers on data literacy, so developing teachers' data literacy. And we designed these courses as kind of being in person and spread over time, 4 days. And given that we have some funding to do that, it's good that we can offer funding to schools so they can find substitute teachers, replacement teachers in place, so that teachers are not crammed into a couple of hours of professional learning time and just forget about it. And that's one thing they reflected on, saying, having a professional learning or a training on topics like data literacy or AI literacy as a kind of, tick box exercise, saying, yes, I've done this, now I can do this, doesn't necessarily work. They need time to learn, to reflect, and also to apply, come back in terms of what worked, what didn't. And that goes a long way in terms of, kind of developing those competencies as well as the confidence in teachers. They need time with that. The way we are approaching our AI literacy program is something similar. We are funding their time so that they can be out of their classrooms, they can spend that time. But also, as part of this project, we really want to leverage and show that we value teachers' expertise in what they do. We're not necessarily approaching it as like we are the experts in teaching, we're the experts in pedagogy, we're the experts in AI, this is what you need to know. And that model doesn't necessarily work either. So we almost see teachers as our colleagues, partners, and they bring their own perspective and experience into what would work for their situation, what would work in their schools, because that's the side that we are lacking. We don't have maybe much experience being in a university, but having that partnership with them and co-development with them, I think is an important and maybe a good approach to developing that. And Dr. Trang mentioned something about, like Scotland being in a good place, having a framework in place, like a literacy framework. I wouldn't necessarily say it like that, because yes, we do have some, I think, frameworks there, but in terms of implementing that, there are challenges, and I think that links to what kind of an educational system you have. I think comparing, just out of curiosity, I was looking at the Vietnamese education system. It sounds to me more similar to like where I come from, Turkish educational system, very centralized, top-down approach, as opposed to Scotland being a decentralized approach. That creates its own challenges, because in the initial teacher education program, it comes through all universities. But then we have these models of initial teacher education program where programs are very dense, compact, and you don't necessarily find that opportunity to deliver, let's say, a significant amount of time on a topic like AI literacy or digital literacy, then give them opportunities to practice and reflect on that. And so they spend very little time on this with us in the teacher education program, and they are off to their probationary year or practicing teachers. And after that, the connection between us and them are kind of lost, and that's left to local authorities